Okay, all right. So now that we're to the third part, what we're gonna do is have it where when we actually click on this right here, this gets filled. Okay. Notice when we click it, this becomes accessible. So that's one of the reasons why we need to do it this way. So what we're gonna do is develop and alter develop one script and then add a new function to an existing script. Okay. Now it's important to know that how do we get a script to run when an object becomes active? And this will be helpful in the future for you guys. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a new script, and I'm just going to call this fill inventory slots because that's what it's going to do. Okay, feel free to call it whatever you would want it to be called. And what we're going to do is we're just going to make sure that when we're actually in here, we don't need these because we don't need anything to happen right away. Okay, now it sounds kind of crazy, but what we're going to do is it's called on enable. And what that means is when this object becomes enabled, it'll run whatever's in here. Okay, so for right now, we're going to just do debug.log and we're just going to say enabled. Okay, just so then I can show you what I'm talking about. So I'm going to click here, go to inventory system. Let's drag this over here. And now I'm going to hit play. And if I go to the console and click here, notice how enabled showed up. Okay, so I know it wasn't too fancy or anything like that, but it just kind of gives you an idea of how this piece is going to work. Okay, so now that we have that script made, what we're going to do is actually go back to an existing script, the inventory system script, and we're going to add another function at the bottom. Okay, so what I'm going to do is add another function, and I'm going to give a function, and I'm just going to say read inventory. Okay, because what we want to be able to do is just read this, what we stored in here. When I say in here, I mean right here, and we're just going to make sure it goes into the proper area. Okay, so that's what the primary purpose of that piece is going to be like. All right, so when we're actually in there, this is when it gets a little bit code heavy. Well, not too bad, but a little bit more than what we're used to. So what we're going to do is I'm going to make a new game object. I'm just going to call it slot because that's what I name my inventory slots. So it just gives me an idea, hey, that's what that is, okay? And I'm going to do the same thing for var slot image and make that an image, right? And let's just make sure we're good on that. Okay, so then the next one I'm going to do is what we're going to do is just kind of figure out, okay, we want to read through our entire array. So in order to read through an entire array, we have to do a loop. Because it's not like you know how big the array is. I mean, yes, you do because you made it, but you want to make it where regardless of whatever size it is, you don't have to go around and change the number to every single area that you reference this array, because it'll become very tedious in the long run when you do this kind of stuff. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're just going to do a for loop. So if we're going to do for var I is normally used as the variable of choice for loops. Okay, and we're going to say I less than inventory slot arr dot length, and this is something that just gives us the length of the array, like how many objects are in it. And I plus plus is just another way of saying I equals I plus 1. Okay, and we're just gonna space that out, and we're gonna have that in there. So now inside of this, what we're going to do is say, hey, if, and just kind of how we did this check slot, we're going to say, hey, if inventory slot ARR, instead of an actual number, we're going to say I, and if it's filled equals true, then I want you to do something. What do I want you to do? I want you to actually fill it in the slot. This slot over here in the inventory area. Okay, so this is where we use slot, and then we're gonna do the whole game object dot find, and we're just gonna find the name of the slot. So we're just gonna use the actual name that we saved inside our array dot slot name. Okay, we're gonna do that, and then we're gonna say, hey, we also need to reference the image, so we're just gonna do that, and then we're gonna image. There we go. Okay, and now that we have that, we're just gonna make sure now we have access to the actual slot. It could be slot 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And then we're just gonna say, okay, so slot image dot sprite equals inventory slot AR and its image. Okay. So we did a lot of image this, slot that. So just to kind of recap, we made a for loop that's going to go through the entire array. And we're just saying, hey, if any of these are filled, I want you to find the name of the slot, right? It'll be slot 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And inside of that, there's a component called image. And what we're going to do is just say, hey, I want you to use the image that we stored before, and it go into there. Okay, so that allows us to kind of, when we click on the key gets stored in the array, and then when we actually open our inventory, it reads from the array and fills in whatever is in those slots. Okay, so that's kind of how this whole system is going to work. Okay, so now that you have that set, we're going to make sure we hit save. Okay, and then let's go back here real quick. We are going to let's see, go into here. All right, so we have fill inventory slots here, and what we need to do is call this function that we just made in the inventory system. Okay, so let's go ahead and look at what we have here. Right now we only have just the debug. We don't really need this now because that was just more for a test. So now what we're going to do is just, we need access to the game manager because that's where our script is that we made. Oops, game object. Okay, and then var inventory script is inventory script, the system, sorry. All right, now that we have that, we've done this already one time, so we're just going to go ahead and say, hey, game manager equals game object dot find game manager. Okay, and then inventory script equals game manager dot get component inventory system. Okay, and then we're just gonna say, all right, I want you to call inventory script dot read inventory. All right, so now that we have that set, we can finally say, hey, I want you to run read inventory when it becomes enabled. All right, so now if we actually did all this correctly, we can go ahead and click on play. I'm gonna click on this key, and let's go back to the manager. It's a key. I'm gonna click the next one, which is a cannon. So cannon's filled. Now when I click here, notice how the key and the cannon show up in the right spots. So we actually go into slot 1, slot 2, see how it's already filled, but all the rest are empty. Okay, so we're almost there. We just need to add one small piece, and I would definitely urge you guys to make a prefab of what this is, so you don't always have to drag the script and make the event trigger for any of your objects you're making in the future. But since I'm only doing 2, I'm just going to leave it as is. And what we're going to do is go back into our, sorry, not our on enable. Let's see. Let me click on the key, the fill inventory. We're going to go here. And when we call this right here, check slot, what we want to do is say, hey, when I actually select an item, I want it to get destroyed. So it's just important that we actually destroy it. That way then we don't leave a trace of it for any, clicking more than once on a key or anything like that. So we're just going to add destroy, and then we're going to say game object. And if you do this, it's just going to destroy the game object that it's on. Okay, so when I click here, hit play. Now I click here, notice the key went away. Click here, notice the cannon's gone, and they're both here. Okay, now moving forward, you would then need to have a reference of this, which is in your array. That way then you could say, oh, check. So if I say, oh, if I have key in my inventory slot that I need to access, to use, then I could reference that slot itself to open the door, and you could kind of start playing around with that. But for the most part, this is how you set up your inventory system, and hopefully this is helpful to you guys, and you're able to get through it and develop even a more elaborate system on top of what we went over.